Countering piracy off the Somali coast. A number of insurance companies are planning to set up the world's first private navy to take on the pirates on the high seas. Is it a viable solution? What authority would a private navy answer to? And what are the risks? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Taimur Nabili. Now, there is already a multinational naval force patrolling the seas off Somalia. But is it enough? Already there is evidence that the pirates are evading those patrols by spreading their activities east towards India and down south as far as the Maldives. For the insurance companies, having already lost hundreds of millions of dollars in ransom payments, the answer lies in the private sector. They're considering a private fleet, about 20 patrol boats with armed guards, costing around $16 million to escort ships passing through the Suez Canal and the Indian Ocean. Several shipping firms seem to be on board already, and even the British government is said to be considering the idea. But who would control this private force and pay its costs? And is military escalation at sea necessarily the answer to a problem whose roots lie in poverty and political chaos on land? Well, it seems that for Shawn Wolfson, greater policing is certainly the way forward. He's a senior partner with Jardine Lloyd Thompson Group that insures 14% of the world's commercial shipping fleet. Now, he's told the British newspaper The Independent that the idea is to tackle the disconnect between the private security sector and the international naval force. This is what he has to say. "We think we can help remedy that and place this force under the control of the multinational force. We look after about 5,000 ships and have had 10 vessels taken in total, including a seizure where one crew member was shot and killed. Piracy is a serious problem. These are criminals basically extorting funds, so why not do something more proactive?" Well, to consider those questions and much more, I'm joined by, in London, Simon Jones, who's Director of Triton International, partners with the Somaliland Coast Guard. Also in London, Mohammed Gur is Chairman of the Somalia Group, the Somalia Concern Group. And in Johannesburg, Peter Cook, former Royal Marine officer and co-founder of the Maritime Security Review. Gentlemen, thank you all very much for being with us. I'm going to begin actually in London with Simon Jones, because you're working with the Somaliland government, and I'd like you just to bring us up to date, lay the groundwork here for us. What is the current situation with regards to the piracy problem?
The piracy problem continues to escalate. The coalition forces in both the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean are continuing with their presence of patrolling and responding to the aid of commercial vessels as and when they are able to. They obviously have a priority for the World Food Programme convoys and transits, but in general the age-old problem of the area being too big for the force to cover correctly is an ongoing problem.
So the force isn't big enough as it stands, but are the international forces behind this particular patrol planning to escalate, planning to do something about it? Have they any new ideas? Other than
widening or lengthening the international transit corridor, which only applies really to the Gulf of Aden and the mouth of the Gulf of Arabia and the Indian Ocean, there is not a lot more they can do. It would be very difficult because of so many varieties of transit routes in the Indian Ocean to have dedicated corridors there. So they really are limited in what they can do, and also with the amount of resources and the cost of maintaining it.
All right.
They don't provide dedicated protection to vessels, so it's more of an area assistance, which is the problem.
Then the idea, Peter Cook, of a private force is surely a decent one.
Well, without a shadow of a doubt, the concept of using a private force on the face of it does appear to be attractive. However, what you've got to understand is that, as Simon said, the international force, which stands currently at around about 40 ships in the area, but normally only has somewhere between 12 and 20 actually conducting counter-piracy role, is grossly inadequate for what they need. They would actually need 83 ships if they wanted to patrol the area adequately. Now, I really don't think that a private naval company is going to be able to replicate what the coalition forces are going to do. And so what they will be able to do is, I think, very effectively to deter pirates from actually assaulting individual ships or possibly small groups of ships. But they're definitely not going to be able to solve the piracy problem.
Mahmoud Gur, from your perspective, why is the Somali government not playing more of a role in this? I mean, this is obviously a very deep and intractable question with regards to local politics, but just if you could outline for us what role the government, such as it is, plays in this particular game.
Well, as you know, the Somali government is very, very weak, and it's limited only in some parts of Mogadishu. So the government has no reach to tackle the piracy problem. But the piracy problem is one that is, flourishing because of the absence of a strong Somali government, and that is where the problem lies. Instead of just worrying about or thinking about sending a private contractors, private marines, I think the best way is to solve the Somali problem. That will definitely deal with the piracy efficiently and effectively.
We'll come to the roots of the Somali problem in just a moment.
Government.
We'll come to the roots of the Somali problem in just a moment. But just as it stands right now, I mean, do you think that the international community is paying enough attention, taking enough notice, talking enough to the authorities that are there? Or are they just regarding this as something they have to deal with on their own?
Well, the piracy problem is there, and it is there to stay as long as there is no system of government in Somalia. So if you want to deal with the piracy problem efficiently and effectively, you have to solve the Somali crisis. At the moment, how many, as you said, there are over 50 naval ships belonging to NATO and other countries in Somali waters, patrolling the the waters, and that costs a lot, millions and millions of dollars every year. Now you are thinking of bringing private contractors, which is basically illegal in international law. On which who is going to regulate those people? What is the okay? How much will they cost? Per year, rather than and how much piracy costs at the moment. So I think if you bring a private contractors in Somali waters, that will definitely, you're playing in the hands of extremists and Shabab, who will take advantage of that initiative and expand it towards the seas rather than inland.
Look, we'll address each of those questions in just a moment. But let me come back to Simon Jones for just a second and ask you to comment on what Mahmoud was just saying there. Do you think, as someone who works with the Somaliland Coast Guard, do you think that the indigenous, the local attempts to tackle this are ineffective, and is there no way that they can be better used?
Yes, there's definitely ways that they can be better used, and equally, yes, it is ineffective. It's ineffective because in order for the indigenous Somali effort to counter piracy to work correctly and to be built in a way that provides an effective coast guard for the coastline of Somalia, is that it needs to be supported by the international community. Now, what we're talking about here with regards to a private navy, what that provides is risk management to the shipping industry, and we need to be specific about this. Risk management to the shipping industry in order for the shipping industry to maintain its commercial capability throughout the world, which every single one of us depends on with the amount of trade, at sea. Equally, the potential development of the Somali Coast Guard capability is equally as intrinsic and as absolutely important as any other scheme that is currently available. The international community, in supporting that, will allow not just the pressure on the TFG in Mogadishu to be eased, because the regional governments, whether it be Puntland, Galmudug State, and indeed the government in Somaliland, they have the ability, if supported, to be able to implement these programs in the way we are doing in Somaliland.
But
and by
sorry to interrupt
empowering this, certainly.
I mean, you're talking about risk management and issues like that, which all sounds relatively benign. But as a businessman who's involved as a contractor in some instances yourself, tell me a little bit about how this might work, because a private navy, some people would say that's a mercenary business, and would we begin to wonder who's paying them, who's controlling them, what's really behind this here, and who stands to benefit?
Well, the benefit will be severalfold. The benefit from the research that I've done and what I know about this program, the benefit will be immediately to the shipping industry, in that they will be able to go about their business within and offshore the coast of Somalia with a decreased risk of piracy and hijacking. That obviously benefits everybody else within the commercial sector because goods are arriving on time. At an insurance level, I'm sure that will benefit in the sense of reduced premiums and increased risk management profile.
Who's paying the soldiers, and who's controlling these guys? I mean,
well, depending on the type of manpower they use, and you know, to date, I'm not aware of what manpower they're looking at using. If it is private contractors, then obviously they will be paid by the private naval company entity, but equally, you know, the private contractors who have the skills and the knowledge and the capability to do that are invariably going to be military people that are as trained as the current military out there.
Peter Cook, aren't we crossing all sorts of very, very grey areas and shady lines here in terms of legal accountability, in terms of responsibility, in terms of who actually is calling the shots on all of this?
Yes, we are. There are a number of problems. I mean, the first thing is that the ships will have to come under the jurisdiction of a specific state, and therefore that state will give them their flag to fly. And once they do that, it is the legislation of that country that they will have to abide by, which will include their rules of engagement. Now, that's called a letter of marque, and the private naval company is going to have to ensure that they have a flag to fly and they're operating under a letter of marque. Now, what that means is that those particular ships with those men on board will be accountable to that country. And so it is up to the individual country as to whether or not they're content with that happening. Secondly, ships at sea have a great demand for logistics, supplies. And before those ships can go into any port, they will have to seek permission to go into that port. The Indian Ocean, the area that they're covering at the moment, is roughly equivalent to the land mass of the whole of Europe. And therefore, it's an enormous area. And so these ships will have to have a number of ports around that area that they can go into to resupply, get new people on board, do various mechanical repairs, servicing of the boats, etc. So it is a logistical challenge, it is a legal challenge, and for
can't you see, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, can't you see the possibility here? Can't you see the possibility here that you're going to get a sort of a Blackwater in Iraq situation? Some of these sailors are going to be cruising the high seas, not really answerable to any clearly defined government. I mean, you're saying there are structures in place, but aren't they likely to think that they have pretty much free rein to bully anybody who's out there on the waters and, you know, have the ability to judge who is a pirate and who isn't, and generally be fairly lawless in their activity?
Well, as I said, it will all depend upon the country that gives them their flag of marque, or their letter of marque, sorry, because it will then be the responsibility of that particular country to ensure that that ship and the crew abide to their legislation and their rules of engagement, because that country will then be accountable to the international community for what that ship and the people on it actually get involved in.
All right, well, let's address some of the points that Mahmoud Gura was making a moment ago and give a bit of background here to the bigger picture in Somalia. It's no surprise that the shippers and insurers are looking for answers, but does that solution lie in patrolling the seas? It's worth considering a few of the social and political elements at play in the country itself here. because after the collapse of the Siad Barre government in 1991, Somalia's coastline, around 3,000 kilometres long, and their rich fishing waters were suddenly unregulated and unprotected, and foreign fishing fleets began trawling those waters with factory ships and severely depriving the local fishermen. Then in 2004, the UN Environment Programme reported the Indian Ocean tsunami had washed up rusting containers of toxic waste on the shores of Somalia. Toxic waste that had been dumped by Western multinationals. And the fishermen of Somalia, they say they only began taking their weapons to sea just to protect their waters and their fish. And this was the genesis of the entire piracy problem. Let's go back to Mahmoud Gur. Do you think that the story of Somalia's internal politics is being ignored by the Western powers, who really only care about the safety of their ships, and that what we're really doing here is addressing the symptom and not the cause?
Well, that's exactly what it is, because by thinking or planning to send mercenaries, private contractors to the Somali waters, that exactly gives you the picture that the international community is deliberately ignoring the plight of Somalia, the real conflict in Somali problem, which is inland, solving the Somali problem. Basically, you have to think these people will, as you said, and pointed well, is that they will be like Blackwater in Iraq. They can kill anybody. It will be difficult to differentiate between real pirates and fishermen. These people might go to coastal villages and kill civilians. These people may even, because they are commercial, because they are in for profit, they may even, rob and loot, commercial Somali commercial ships in because of piracy related thing. So I think it is this idea is as bad as sending Ethiopian troops to Somalia. This will definitely have a repercussion, and it will make the Somali situation a lot worse. And
but
it
look,
will take
where does the answer lie then?
Internationalize.
Where does the answer lie then? Because something has to be done about the piracy, does it not?
Well, nothing has been done on the piracy. There are more than 50 naval ships in Somali waters. The pirates still operate. The sea, as you said, is very, very huge. It's not an area that can be controlled. If you want to control piracy, you have to control the coastal towns. If you don't control the coastal towns, then you can't control piracy. It's as simple as that. So you have to solve the Somali crisis first. You have to support all the resources that has been put in the sea, and others have to be put in the Somali government to strengthen itself and defeat the extremists in the country.
All right, Simon Jones, the issue of the question that Mahmoud raises there is a valid one. I mean, a lot of people say that the problem is actually on the shore. It's not at the sea at all. But how does one address that problem?
Yeah, the problem is on shore. I think we need to get something into perspective here, though. Any private naval company or force that we're discussing here, and certainly the specifics of the project that we're discussing here, is solely and primarily for the protection of commercial vessels in aid and in support of the international community coalition naval forces. It's not geared or designed to implement any action or support or programs on the land in Somalia. It is purely there to supplement and assist and develop the protection of commercial vessels. It is not a political solution. And certainly the parameters of any of those private naval forces having interaction with pirates, having interaction, I mean, they would not have interaction with coastal towns in Somalia.
Let me stop you there for a moment, because I think Mahmoud Gur wants to respond to that point.
Yeah, but how will these private contractors, how will they differentiate between those legitimate or those potential pirates and the fishermen? How will they differentiate those?
Exactly.
Who is going to guarantee that they will not attack those people? Who will? I mean, what laws? Who's going to regulate them and make sure that they will not be invading Somali villages?
All right. Let Simon answer your question then.
I believe the statements in the media recently by the the people that are developing this project, was that they would work in conjunction with and in support of the naval coalition of the naval authorities. Now, if that is the case, then both legally, under the parameters of the legal systems that they work under, the flags and the letters of marque that Peter Cook rightly stated would have to be in place, there would also be strict structures and frameworks as to how they defend the vessels. They are not a proactive, aggressive force. I have no doubt whatsoever that they are there purely to defend and protect vessels at sea in international waters. Now, that does not place them near Somalia. Secondly, insofar as differentiating between who is a pirate and who is a fisherman, whether they are armed or not, is again a simple process of they will go through the same process that the navies use. They will have very strict structures of rules of the use of force as opposed to rules of engagement, because they are not a military force.
All right.
They will work under the legal parameters of the flag that they are empowered to perform those defensive operations for, and they should not have any interaction with Somalia. It is a completely separate political and social problem that needs to be addressed by the international community.
I would suspect
that. We're on the ground there.
I would suspect, if I'm cynical for a moment, that this view of forces in this context as being benign and simply carrying out orders may be a somewhat optimistic one. Peter Cook, you know, you're a military man. In your experience, former military men are well-trained, normal people by and large, but there's still a cadre of folks out there who are out there for themselves, aren't there? Can we really trust a private force?
Well, I think that the key to all this is the vetting and the regulation that they work within. Currently, at the moment, there are some very good companies that are doing very similar work to this, and indeed there's one company that's doing particularly well that's using naval vessels or escort patrol vessels, and they're doing that very effectively. However, there are also a significant number of other companies that one could term as cowboys, and they don't have the same awareness of the maritime domain as various other companies, and their standards are not particularly high. I think the key, as I say, the key to this whole thing would be the vetting and the regulation within which these guys have to work. Because after all, if that is good and it works well, I think you'll get a very good service.
All right.
If, however, we're not prepared to establish that, then I think the level of service we get will mirror the regulation under which they work.
Mahmoud Gur, how much difference do you think it would make if the international community didn't only go after the pirates, but also made an effort to protect Somalia's waters from illegal fishers and from dumpers?
Absolutely, that is basically what it is. Because the piracy is a temporary problem, which depends only fixing Somali political situation. If you do that, then piracy will go. That is as simple as that. But the international community have to come with a very serious, and carefully studied program to help the Somali people overcome the problems that the political problems that they are facing today. At the moment, the government is very weak. It has been cornered by the Islamists in every corner. It has been limited only in few quarters of Mogadishu. What we need is the international community to help the government strengthen, expand, and impose its will on the land. If it can do that, then I think piracy can be eliminated, and also extremism can be eliminated. As simple as that.
Gentlemen, there we will have to leave it. I'd like to thank you all very much indeed. Mahmoud Gur in London, in Johannesburg, Peter Cook, and also in London, Simon Jones. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We always welcome your comments and suggestions. You can email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. But that's it for now. Bye-bye.